Hello, everybody. I feel so happy to have this interview with Dr. Fred, who is the author of the book Forgive for Good. And it's an honor for me that this morning I can talk with you. Welcome, Dr. Fred.
Thank you.
Dr. Fred, what happens in our brain when we forgive consciously as a discipline?
I mean, that's a hard question to answer. I'm not sure that it happens just in our brains. I think there's a soul element, interpersonal element, chemical element. I'm not sure it's just brain, but you change a relationship that we had to a memory in a way that memory doesn't continue to limit us or hold us back. So it's an alteration in a story, in a perception of how a part of our life impacts us, and it changes that.
Okay.
That appears to have consequences and implications for every aspect of a person's life.
Okay, thank you. And why is a forgiving practice beneficial for women with fibromyalgia?
Physical suffering is very challenging of any kind, and self-identification as a victim of anything is very challenging. So when you armor up against your suffering and you fight it and you say that it's wrong and bad and shouldn't happen, from my understanding, the constriction and the negativity make the pain experience worse. There is a little bit of research on how forgiveness can impact the perception of pain, but there's so much in the medical world now about how you can eliminate the physical pain, like structural problem, and the pain still continues until the emotional, spiritual, whatever it is, resolves as well. That's one piece. But I think the bigger piece is the identification of self as a victim, and how that increases hopelessness and helplessness, and may not even be accurate. But when you forgive your body for behaving the way a body does, one, you release that perception of the self as being under attack, but two, you gain some flexibility so that you can then deal more skillfully with whatever illness you have.
Okay. And what specific forgiving exercise can I do right now to manage chronic pain? Probably most of the women that are watching are in pain right now.
You know, there's a couple that somebody could do very briefly. One is if you have any habit of telling a story about your life, even let's say about an illness, you refer to fibromyalgia, what the quickest way is to try a different story. One with more hopefulness, one with more purpose, or one with more resilience. So forgiveness is in essence a changing of story. So I mean, I've had people just experiment with different stories till they come up with one that's better. The second piece that can be done immediately is a kind of, it's a cognitive disputation, but it's also Byron Katie's kind of work, which is, am I arguing with reality? You know, right this moment, am I fighting what is? If I am, I'm going to lose. So the immediate thing is the disputation. Is what I'm saying true? This shouldn't have happened. This is awful. This is terrible. The only truthful response is it just is. And a third thing that can be done immediately is do some kind of stress management practice to lower the stress chemicals, lower the reactivity. Take a couple of deep breaths into and out of your belly. Think of someone you love. Remember something you're grateful for. Anything that reduces the impact of adrenaline and other chemicals. Those three practices are the heart of most. Maybe a fourth would be to kind of mindfully observe what your body experiences and then label it so you can get some control over it. But some form of those four practices are at the heart of mental health.
Okay. Sounds interesting. Dr. Fred, how often do you recommend practicing this exercise and why?
I mean, there's no one formula for people. I know that when you have the identification of victim, you want to catch yourself whenever you refer to yourself as a victim in any way, whenever you blame something, like and I'm not saying this is easy, and the more painful the experience is, the harder it is to separate one's consciousness from the physical pain. But the sensation of victimhood should be challenged regularly, which is, I'm a person experiencing this. I'm not necessarily a victim of anything. So the crucial thing is to stop yourself from talking in certain ways. There is some data that people who teach themselves to simply talk about their physical conditions less have better outcomes. Just find something else to talk about and think about. So that would have to be practiced pretty assiduously. I'm going to also say that the practice of relaxation or mindfulness, they should be practiced pretty regularly until you, what I would say, counter condition the stress response. That if you have any kind of issue in your life that you almost always react inevitably to, it becomes a conditioned response. You want to breathe into it, out of that, or observe it in a way that the conditioned response dissipates. So the goal is to do short practices until you're not such a prisoner of your own reactions.
Okay. As a doctor with more than 20 years experience in the field, in your professional opinion, what would you say to a person who feels that they have already tried everything and the pain is only getting worse?
Well, sometimes that's true. So if that's true, that their condition is worsening and they haven't figured out how to get a handle on it, you would want to be incredibly empathic to their suffering. And it would be nice to, if they needed instruction and what they're saying is actually true, for them to become incredibly empathic for their suffering, because it may be quite hard. Another response is most people don't try everything. What they tend to try are stress-based responses of some degree of fight or flight. Like, I don't want to deal with this, I hate it, I can't stand it, I want to beat it, I want it to end. Those are all kind of adrenaline-back responses. What people don't try, even when they've said everything, is loving kindness towards themselves, deep compassion towards their human predicament, gratitude for the people who are there to help them. I rarely, because usually that statement of I've tried everything is a kind of adrenaline-backed statement of frustration, which is very different than, even though I've tried a lot, I realize that this may be a long-standing difficulty for me, and I'm going to have to be very kind to myself.
Okay.
So the very statement is a kind of adrenaline-backed harshness, but if it's true, you want to be nothing but kind.
Yes. Last question, Dr. Fred. What would you say to a woman with fibromyalgia who feels afraid of starting the process of therapy with a psychologist?
Everybody's afraid. I mean, one, you and I are afraid of a lot of things. If your body's not working, you're very frightened about it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse, there's something wrong with me. You know, people talk about illness as living in an alternative reality. You know, they're not in the same world. The other piece, I think what you asked is, what do you do with somebody or say to somebody who's like terrified of what her present is, but more scared of trying something new to get something else? And that's a very common human thing, and I would, the only thing I would do, the only thing you can do is really empathize with that predicament, but also let them know that, you know, of course you're scared. You hurt like heck, and you're afraid you're going to hurt even worse, and at least you got used to this, and maybe there's a secondary gain there that, you know, you've used your illness to get some power or some, you know, excuse in life, and you're afraid you'll lose that, but you just have to recognize that the choice you're making is to stay exactly the way you are, and that's fine. Just don't complain about it and don't expect anybody to give you huge sympathy, but it's perfectly understandable that you make that choice. Lots of people make it. That's what I might say.
Okay. To finish our interview, I will invite you to share with the audience how they can connect with you, where they can buy your book, and how they can make an appointment with you.
I mean, my book is Forgive for Good. It's a very successful book on forgiveness. My website is learningtoforgive.com, and I know fibromyalgia can be a tough burden for people, so, you know, I'm sorry for that. Anyway, thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much, Dr. Luskin. I appreciate your time. It was wonderful.
I'll speak to you again. Take care.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Of course. Bye-bye.